And I am not a friggin' doctor. I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to anything I say except for the parts where I say don't take PEDs. Coach Greg, in today's video, we're going over what Brandon took in his first cycle, why he did it, does he regret it, and how do you know when you're old enough to start? Brandon was only 19 years of age, so we're going to go over his video where he talks about it, and we're going to see, did he do it the wrong way, the right way? What can you learn from this? Are you old enough? Should you hold out? So please watch this very important video.
Currently, I'm on TRT levels of tests and I have been for the past 12 weeks. And I'm about probably the next few weeks when my blood work comes back because I've actually just requested a blood test to be sent to my house.
And so since his first cycle, he's now been taking steroids on and off for 4 years. He just finished a 12-week HRT cycle where he does a lower level of testosterone. And you're thinking, I don't believe him. Look how much muscle he has. But what you don't know is it takes a lot less testosterone to keep the muscle you have than it does to build the muscle. So once you've built that muscle, you can in fact lower the dose and still look almost as good as you did while blasting on higher doses. Case in point, I'm literally on now 140 milligrams of doctor-prescribed testosterone a week. Upped it from 120 and up that from 100. And people are thinking, there's no way that you're only on that. But that is all I need to maintain this level of size and conditioning. And keep in mind, I'm racing bicycles. Doing all that cardio makes it even more difficult to keep the muscle that I have. But even on those low doses of testosterone, I still have as much muscle as I do right now. It's not as much as when I was blasting steroids, not caring about my health in my earlier years, but it's certainly enough to keep a decent amount of muscle.
I'm very aware that this is the case now, but when I started taking stuff, when I made the decision to become a natural, this definitely wasn't something I was aware of, and it definitely wasn't something that I thought that I would be doing probably for the rest of my life.
So when Brandon was 19 years of age and decided to go on cycle, he didn't think about everything. It's very difficult at 19 years of age to look into the future. Consider I started taking steroids much older than Brandon, and even I didn't think about all the health ramifications or what it might do to my health and will I be doing this for the rest of my life. I just wanted to get bigger, to look better, to keep improving. I was getting to the point where I couldn't make any gains, and so I wanted to keep progressing, and so I took PEDs. Not saying you should, and just because you can't make gains that you should take steroids. But that is why I did it.
I personally would highly recommend trying to stay natural for as long as possible. It is important and you owe it to yourself and your own genetic capabilities.
So Brandon's recommendation is to stay natural for as long as possible. Same recommendation as I say. If you're making gains, highly suggest you don't take anything. Not that you should ever take anything, but if you're already making progress, why change that? Trust me, if you are making progress, gaining strength, gaining muscle size, training is fun. When you're no longer making that progress, it's not as fun as it once was. People start the gym gung-ho, they're making newbie gains, making progress, and it's motivating. Every week you go to the gym, you look better, feel better, it's amazing. But if you do take steroids, realize that you are going to build muscle at an accelerated rate. But that soon will come to an end. And when you go off cycle, you're not going to gain that muscle that you were while on. Also, you can get depressed, you don't feel as good, you can have libido issues, and so on. It's not cool. So before deciding to take steroids, realize, what are you going to feel like when you stop taking them? Or will you be able to stop?
Skinny arms, skinny legs, a messed up six pack, thinking I have probably the worst genetics in the world.
Imagine being Brandon saying, I thought I had the worst genetics, and he shows a picture and he looks amazing before he even started training. He already looked good. But you don't know your true potential just by your starting point. You can take a selfie and say, I don't look very good, doesn't mean you can't build muscle. You might be someone that responds very quickly to lifting weights. Other people, they might look like they have a lot of muscle to start with, but they lift weights and they don't make the gains that you did. There are so many factors that go into deciding if you have great genetics or not, and you will not know if you have great genetics until you've trained for a few years.
To transition from someone that thought they had the worst genetics in the world to winning shows and traveling the world and competing in them.
So it just goes to show, you don't know if you have good genetics or not. Brandon thought he had horrible genetics. Clearly has way above average genetics. I do think that it's because we're brainwashed by so many good pictures on social media, Gymshark models and so on, that we think that that's a normal way to look. What we see on a daily basis on social media are people's ultimate pictures from the ultimate athletes. We're not being bombarded by people who have below average physiques. So we see picture after picture of people looking amazing, and we think, oh, I don't look like that. Maybe I should take steroids because I don't look normal. When in fact, you might in fact look above average, as Brandon clearly did, and think you're below average and be more tempted to take PEDs. Don't do it. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself.
I did 3.5 years, almost 4 years of natural bodybuilding, and I'm so glad that I did that. I was able to develop a foundation and I was able to see the results that I yielded, and I was actually quite happy.
So imagine he started lifting weights at 16 and by 19 he's still natural and looks incredible, yet he thought he had poor genetics. But he decided to do a bodybuilding competition and wanted to compete with the best. So decided, well, I may as well take PEDs. My suggestion, rather than competing in an open bodybuilding competition, compete in a drug-tested or natural federation. If you do that, you're going to be a lot more likely to compete against other people who are natural. And yes, I get it. Some of them are not going to be natural, but for the most part, most people are going to be natural, and you're going to be competing on a level playing field. You may not win. A few might be on something and getting away with it, but doesn't mean that you need to.
If it wasn't for my 3.5 years of natural bodybuilding, I would have never seen my genetic potential because I was actually quite happy with the progress I made.
So what I find funny is he says, I gave it that 3.5 years of natural training before I took anything. That is not even close to long enough to hit your natural genetic potential. 3.5 years from the age of 16 to 19? I literally started training at 10. 3.5 years later, I was 13 and a half. Imagine if I said, well, I've been training for 3 years, I'm ready. No, you're not. I was 20, that's 10 years. Still wasn't ready. By the age of 20, I'd competed in multiple bodybuilding competitions and won most of them. Not all of them, and not all the people that I competed against were natural. But so what? I didn't have to win. All that mattered was I was improving. I was competing 142 pounds, 20 years of age, as a bantamweight at nationals. Also junior, and I worked my way up from there. I wasn't close to done yet. Imagine if I'd said, well, I'm 20, I'm bantamweight, I'm competing at nationals, I should take steroids right now. It's too soon. I wasn't ready. I hadn't even come close to hitting my genetic potential. So my advice, train way longer than you think and wait way longer. If you're ready to take PEDs right now, hold off a few more years and see, did you in fact gain any muscle? If you haven't made any progress for 2 straight years, you're probably close to your potential or at your potential. Have you left no stone unturned? Have you maximized your training, learned everything about training so that you train with the best possible workout? Is your diet on point, supplements and so on, the sleep? Or are you just partying harder than last time and not getting enough rest and just eating whatever you want? Eating fast food every day, bulking up thinking you need to bulk and cut? Or are you training to optimize your muscle growth? Rather than just thinking it's time to hop on the sauce, think, am I doing everything in the proper way to maximize my results?
I was called unnatural more times than I can count because people didn't really understand how I was able to progress or have the physique I have. And
I went through the same thing. People year after year said, you're not natural, there's no way, I don't believe you. But that's because you have great genetics. And if you have great genetics, you can actually progress faster than someone who's not natural, who has shitty genetics.
I started to get quite proud of the fact that everyone was attacking me for this thing that I knew in my heart I was natural.
Your opinion of yourself is the only one that matters. So when Brandon was being accused of being unnatural, when he knew that he wasn't, he was proud of that. If anything, I would have used that as motivation to stay natural for even longer.
You may be watching this right now as a natural person, looking at these physiques, learning what you learned from like Greg Doucette's videos, More Plates, More Dates, both incredibly knowledgeable guys.
And I can tell you he's right. You can watch myself, More Plates, More Dates. You can learn about PEDs, what they can do. And we do natty or nots and say, well, look at this guy. That's not natural. This guy's natural. So you know more than ever that PEDs do in fact work. Not only that, when I was growing up, it was steroids, and they were harder to get. Now, with the internet and Google, you can type in SARMs and you can get anything.
And essentially, if you were to watch those videos for years and years, you would build up a pretty good knowledge base on what to take, what not to take, so the temptation has never been more real.
So with the fact that it's so much easier to get PEDs, of course the temptation is even greater. Also, when I was growing up, there was no Instagram, there wasn't even Facebook, and there was no YouTube. Couldn't learn what to take, didn't know how to get it. So the temptation was far smaller for someone like me in a small town. Nowadays, with every person on the internet showing you how great they look and saying to take this and take that, and you know how easy it is to get, the temptation to do PEDs right now is stronger than any time in human history.
I really wanted to do a show, and he said, you know what, you're ready. He basically said, if you want to compete and you want to win this show, there is a good chance you're going to be against people that are unnatural. And if you want to win, you're probably going to have to take something.
And he's saying this is such a great coach because he didn't want to take my money. He said, you're not really that big. You should probably go and train another year and come back at 19 and a half. He was 18 and a half at the time. Comes back a year later, flexes form, and his coach is saying, that's a lot of muscle. Are you in fact natural? And he says, yes, I'm not taking anything. And then the coach says, well, you're probably going to be competing against people who are on things. And so I recommend that you take them because, well, you want to win now, don't you? But he's saying that's a great coach. A great coach wouldn't tell a 19-year-old who clearly has a lot of muscle because he thought he wasn't natural. Imagine. You're 19, are you natural? Because you don't look it. And then tell them you should take PEDs. When you're 19 years old and you hire a coach, the coach shouldn't be telling you to take anything. The coach should be saying, are you natural? Yup, good, stay natural. You don't need it. You may not win the show, but you win the show because you are your best self and we're comparing yourself to you. It's your first show, you don't need to take anything. You may say, oh, you need 4 years of training or 5 years of training? Shouldn't you at least compete once natural before you compete on PEDs? I did 42 bodybuilding competitions natural before I took anything. You really think you can't do one? 42!
I had quite a good experience and quite a good transition from being natty to unnatty. So I'm going to guess it was some pretty good stuff. It's like Russian roulette. You don't know if you're compatible. You don't know who you're getting it off.
And when you do in fact go in your first cycle, a lot of people are disappointed. You may have amazing genetics for building muscle natural, but not amazing genetics for building muscle on PEDs. Some people respond really favorably to steroids. 2 different people could take the exact same cycle. One puts on 20 pounds in a year, the other 7. It's all into your genetics. So just because you have the same cycle, you can't expect to make the same gains. And another word of caution. The first cycle, usually your best. You might gain a lot of muscle the first cycle and think, wow, imagine when I double the dose. Imagine how much bigger I'm going to get. But you don't get that much bigger. Law of diminished returns. Every cycle seems to do less and you need more to gain the same amount of muscle.
And the exact cycle they actually took was just 3 substances. It was testosterone, Anavar, and Clen.
And so what was his first cycle? Well, testosterone was the base, 350 to 400 milligrams a week for about 11 or 12 weeks. That's plenty. It's his first cycle. He wasn't taking anything previously, not even SARMs. So when you take testosterone at 350 to 400 milligrams a week for 12 weeks, typical guy like Brandon, or if you have great genetics, you're probably going to gain 10 pounds of muscle from just that alone. And add to that, 6 weeks out, 20 milligrams of Anavar, switching up to 30 and then 40, split into 2 doses a day. And on top of that, Clen. Start at 25, move to 50, and finally at 75. Those jumps are too high, too quick. To go from 25 to 50, you're doubling the dose. Of course you're going to feel jittery. You shouldn't feel jittery. And if you are, you're overdosing. Not to mention, Clen is not safe. It can be dangerous to your heart. It's not something to be taken lightly. It may not be a steroid, but it's still dangerous, and you can't just abuse these things. My suggestion, if someone was to take Clen, and I'm not suggesting that you do, would be to start at 10 and then slowly go up from there. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and so on. You don't need to make massive jumps for the product to work. As long as you can feel it a little bit, it's working. You don't need to have a massive overdose to get the benefits of taking Clen.
Do not take information that you learn from YouTube videos, from just a random dude in the gym. The only person you can really ask is your coach.
And I don't really agree with Brandon that the only person you should listen to is your coach, because what if you don't have a good coach? You should listen to your doctor. Your doctor. If you're taking PEDs and you're having problems, you can't just ask the coach. Coach might not be honest. I've seen a number of coaches coaching males or females giving ridiculous doses, and they ask me, what do you think about this? And I'll say, that is ridiculous. You can't do that. So if they asked only their coach that they trusted, well, how do you know that that coach is someone you should trust in the first place? Hindsight is 20/20, and don't you think you wish that you did the extra research before you started the cycle rather than just take the coach's advice and just go ahead and do everything they say and then have experience problems later?
Because the doses that I actually took on the prep weren't that high, I was actually, told to not do a PCT after the show, which is something that you actually do after the show.
Listen to his coach's advice. Because you're not taking very high of a dose, you don't need a PCT after the cycle. He's only on 350 to 400 milligrams a test. Do you think that could shut you down? If you said no, you're a moron. You shouldn't be taking steroids if you think that you can take 350 milligrams a test for 3 months and not experience shutdown and not need a PCT. Of course you're going to need a PCT. Of course you're going to be shut down. Even if you take 100 milligrams a week for 3 months, you're going to be shut down. That's how it works. When you introduce testosterone exogenously into your body, your balls, they go on vacation and they stop working. You don't need to be on test and trend 1,000 milligrams a week for your test to stop working. All you need is any testosterone at all taken exogenously, and the balls are like, awesome, we don't have to work anymore. We are going on vacation, time to nap. We've been working our whole life for this. Now we finally get a break. So if you inject just HRT doses, your body will be shut down if you stop, and you will need a PCT to help you bounce back faster than last time.
And if you just want to walk into a room and just have the biggest biceps, I don't think it's worth the potential detrimental health effects it could have on you in the long term.
And personally, I 100% disagree with Brandon on this. He's saying if you're going to compete, it makes more sense to take PEDs than if you just want to be the biggest guy in the room. I don't see any difference in that. Just because you want to be the biggest bodybuilder on stage versus the biggest bodybuilder at the gym versus the biggest guy in the room versus I just want more muscle, I just want to look better on the beach. To me, they're all equally relevant, equally important. You're just doing a bodybuilding show to do a bodybuilding show. You don't need to take PEDs to do bodybuilding shows. You might need them to win and be the best in the world, but you can compete in bodybuilding without PEDs. You can look good on the beach without PEDs, but of course you'll look bigger, probably better with PEDs. But they're equally important. So just because someone says, I don't want to compete, doesn't mean they can never take PEDs. And just because somebody says, I want to compete, doesn't mean they should take PEDs either.
Do I regret it? So with my experience being pretty pleasant, I don't regret it.
And does he in fact regret it? The answer is no. And why? Well, he was lucky. Lucky that he didn't experience any negative side effects. Lucky that he doesn't mind going on HRT for the rest of his life. Lucky that his health is still in check when he gets blood work. But imagine if it had been the other way around. He could have taken steroids, got horrible gyno, had horrible mood, been depressed, shut down, wanted to only do it once, maybe didn't do good in bodybuilding, wanted to stop, and couldn't stop. You don't know. So before deciding to take anything, please go see your doctor, understand all the pros and cons, and do realize that this is a major decision in your life. It may in fact be the biggest decision of your life. More important than deciding to get married.
There's so much advice out there and no one really knows what to listen to, but the best thing to do is just do your own research, get a coach, do it safely, and learn from my experience.
Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching, Greg Doucette IP Pro. Check out the Bloops Watch One, Harder Than Last Time supplements. Of course, you should get those. The cookbooks to help you lose weight, training books, training programs by me and my team. Subscribe and click the bell button now. Like the video if you liked it. Also, follow me on TikTok and Instagram, Greg Doucette. Check it out. And until next time, I'm out.